The Monster Inside Anger Management Simplified, copyright 2025, Compassionate Living Books, LLC. Chapter 1, What Anger Really Is. Anger is not just an emotion. It is a full-body survival response designed to protect you from threat. That matters because when people misunderstand anger, they fight the wrong battle. They try to reason with it, suppress it, or shame it away. None of that works for long because anger does not live only in thoughts. It lives in the nervous system. When your brain perceives danger, whether that danger is real, remembered, or imagined, it shifts control. The part of the brain responsible for reflection, empathy, and impulse control becomes quieter. The parts designed for speed and defense become louder. Your heart rate increases. Your muscles tighten. Your breathing changes. Your focus narrows. This happens before conscious choice. That does not mean anger is uncontrollable. It means anger is powerful. Anger evolved to help humans survive immediate threats. It prepares the body to act quickly. But the modern world is full of threats that are not physical. Disrespect, conflict, financial stress, parenting pressure, relationship pain, feeling ignored or powerless. Your nervous system does not always know the difference, so it responds as if survival is on the line. This is why anger feels convincing. This is why it feels urgent. This is why it feels justified in the moment. Anger tells a story very fast. I am being threatened. I am being disrespected. I am losing control. I need to stop this now. That story narrows your thinking. It reduces complexity. It turns people into obstacles instead of humans. It prioritizes winning, defending, or controlling over understanding. And when that happens, harm becomes more likely. Many people resist this idea because they associate anger with morality. They think anger means something about who they are, that they are bad, broken, or dangerous. Others go in the opposite direction. They treat anger as proof they are right, proof they are strong, proof they are not weak. Both views are incomplete. Anger is not a personality trait. It is not a character flaw, and it is not evidence of righteousness. Anger is a state. And like any powerful state, it changes what you are capable of doing. This is where responsibility comes in. Even though anger is automatic, what you do with it is not. The fact that anger is biological does not mean it gets a free pass. It means it needs to be taken seriously. When anger becomes the default response to frustration, conflict, or stress, the nervous system learns that pattern. The threshold lowers. What used to take a lot to trigger now takes very little. This is why people often say, I don't know why I reacted like that, or that wasn't me. It was you. But it was you in a state of narrowed control. Unchecked anger trains the body to escalate faster next time. It reinforces itself. It becomes familiar, and familiarity can feel like inevitability. But inevitability is a myth. Anger is not destiny. It is a signal that something feels unsafe, unfair, overwhelming, or out of control. The mistake most people make is responding to that signal with action instead of regulation. They act first, they explain later. They apologize after. Real anger management starts earlier. It starts with understanding that anger is not asking you to attack. It is asking you to pay attention. But attention does not require explosion. Here is a hard truth that matters. Anger does not have to be violent to be damaging. Tone matters, posture matters, unpredictability matters. The feeling people get in their body around you matters. Fear is not measured only by bruises. This is why unmanaged anger reshapes families, relationships, and environments. People adapt. They become quieter, more cautious, more watchful. Children learn to scan moods. Partners learn to choose their words carefully. Not because they are dramatic, because their nervous systems are learning. Anger teaches lessons whether you intend it to or not. The goal of this audiobook is not to erase anger. The goal is to change your relationship with it, to recognize it earlier, to slow it down, to prevent it from becoming dangerous, to stop it from shaping the people you love. Understanding anger is the first step, not to excuse it, but to manage it, because anger does not make you a monster, but pretending it is harmless is how the monster grows. Chapter 2. The many faces of anger. Most people think anger looks one way. They imagine yelling, slamming doors, exploding. That narrow picture is part of the problem because it allows many forms of anger to go unnoticed and unchallenged. Anger is not always loud. Sometimes it is sharp and cutting. Sometimes it is cold and distant. Sometimes it is quiet but heavy. Explosive anger is the most visible. Raised voices, threatening language, physical intimidation, objects thrown, space invaded. This form is hard to deny because it disrupts everything around it. People freeze, children flinch, conversations end. But explosive anger is not the only form that damages relationships. Irritable anger shows up as constant frustration, snapping, criticism, impatience, a tone that communicates annoyance even when the words are neutral. This kind of anger can feel justified because it seems mild, but its impact accumulates. Over time, people feel worn down and unsafe bringing things up. Silent anger is often praised as control, but it can be deeply damaging. Withdrawal, refusal to talk, emotional shutdown, punishing silence. This form of anger leaves others guessing, replaying conversations in their head, trying to fix something they cannot see. It teaches fear through absence rather than noise. Controlling anger hides behind responsibility, monitoring, correcting, interrogating, deciding what is acceptable, framing dominance as protection or logic. This form of anger often goes unchallenged because it does not look chaotic, but it restricts autonomy and creates an atmosphere of tension. Passive-aggressive anger avoids direct conflict but still delivers harm. Sarcasm, backhanded comments, deliberate delays, doing something poorly on purpose, jokes that land like insults. This form of anger allows the person to deny responsibility while still expressing hostility. Then there is righteous anger, the kind that feels clean and justified, the kind that says, "I am right, therefore my reaction is acceptable." This form is especially dangerous because it shuts down self-reflection. When anger is tied to moral certainty, it becomes harder to regulate. What all these forms share is impact. They change how people feel around you. People begin to anticipate your mood. They adjust their behavior. They limit what they share. They scan for safety. That is not connection. That is adaptation. Anger also does not exist in isolation. It leaks. It leaks into parenting, into partnerships, into workplaces, into friendships. Even when anger is not expressed outwardly, the body communicates it. Tight posture, short responses, eye contact avoided or intensified. People sense it before you say a word. Many people defend certain forms of anger by saying they are not hurting anyone. They believe that because they are not screaming or hitting, their anger is contained. But fear is not only about volume. Fear is about unpredictability, power, and the possibility of escalation. This is why understanding your personal anger style matters. You may not identify with rage, but you might recognize irritability, or withdrawal, or control, or sarcasm, or moral certainty that justifies sharpness. None of these mean you are a bad person. They mean your nervous system has learned a way to express threat. Anger is communication, even when it is indirect. The question is not whether you feel anger. The question is how it lands on the people around you. Managing anger with compassion starts by seeing it clearly. Not just how it feels inside you, but how it shapes the environment you create. Because the people you love do not experience your intent. They experience your impact. Chapter 3. Where anger comes from. Anger rarely begins in the moment it shows up. It arrives carrying history. Many people believe their anger is caused by what just happened. A comment, a mistake, a tone, a disagreement. But for most people, that moment is only the spark. The fuel was already there. Anger builds through accumulation. Chronic stress is one of the biggest contributors. When the nervous system stays activated for long periods of time, it loses flexibility. Patience shortens. Tolerance drops. Small disruptions feel overwhelming. Anger becomes easier to access because the system is already braced. Sleep deprivation plays a powerful role. Lack of sleep reduces impulse control and emotional regulation. The brain becomes more reactive and less reflective. When sleep is consistently poor, anger can appear suddenly and intensely, even in people who do not see themselves as angry. Financial strain is another common source. Ongoing worry about money creates a constant sense of threat. Even when nothing is being discussed about finances, the stress lives in the background. It drains emotional reserves and increases irritability. Caregiving pressure matters too. Parenting, caring for aging parents, managing a household, or being responsible for others' well-being requires constant emotional labor. When there is little relief, anger can emerge as exhaustion and resentment. Past experiences shape anger as well. Many people grew up in homes where anger was modeled as normal, explosive, or dangerous. Some learned that anger was the only way to be heard. Others learned to suppress anger until it leaked out sideways. These patterns do not disappear just because someone becomes an adult. Trauma adds another layer. When the nervous system has experienced real danger in the past, it becomes more sensitive to threat. Situations that resemble earlier harm, even subtly, can trigger intense reactions. Anger may show up as a protective shield, moving the person away from vulnerability or fear. Shame is often part of the picture. Feeling inadequate, criticized, or unvalued can quickly turn into anger because anger feels stronger than shame. It pushes the discomfort outward instead of inward. But the relief is brief, and the shame often returns afterward, deeper than before. Another source of anger is lack of boundaries. When people consistently say yes when they mean no, tolerate behavior that hurts them, or suppress needs to keep the peace, resentment builds. Anger becomes the voice of unmet boundaries, arriving late and loud. Substances can amplify all of this. Alcohol and other substances lower inhibition and impair judgment, making it easier for anger to surface and harder to control. The anger was already there. The brakes were removed. One of the most important things to understand about anger is that it is rarely random. It follows patterns, certain situations, certain people, certain times of day, certain levels of exhaustion or stress. Anger feels unpredictable only when these patterns have not been examined. Understanding where your anger comes from does not excuse harmful behavior, but it does make change possible. When you stop treating anger as a personal failure or a mystery, you can begin to see it as information. Information about stress levels, about unmet needs, about old wounds that still need care. Anger is not asking you to explode. It is asking you to pay attention earlier. And learning to listen without acting is where real management begins. Chapter 4: How Stress Turns Anger Up. Stress does not just make life harder. It changes how the brain functions. When stress becomes chronic, the nervous system stays in a state of readiness. The body prepares for threat even when nothing immediate is happening. This constant activation wears down the systems responsible for emotional regulation and impulse control. Under stress, the brain shifts priorities. Survival moves to the front. Reflection, patience, and empathy move to the background. This is why people under long-term stress often say they feel like a different person. They are not imagining it. The parts of the brain that help pause and choose are working with fewer resources. Stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline flood the body. In small doses, they help with focus and energy. In constant doses, they create irritability, tension, and emotional volatility. The nervous system becomes louder. Small frustrations feel bigger. Interruptions feel intrusive. Requests feel like demands. Disagreements feel like threats. Anger becomes a faster response because it is a mobilizing emotion. It creates energy. It pushes outward. It feels decisive when everything else feels overwhelming. One of the dangers of stress-related anger is how normal it can feel. Many people tell themselves they are reacting appropriately because life really is hard. They are juggling work, family, finances, health, and responsibilities that do not pause. The stress is real, but the impact of stress-fueled anger is also real. Stress does not give anger a free pass. It explains why the volume is higher, but it does not protect others from the effects. Another problem with stress is that it narrows perspective. When the nervous system is overloaded, it becomes harder to consider alternative interpretations. Tone is misread, intent is assumed, neutral events are filtered through a lens of threat. Anger thrives in this narrowed state. Sleep deprivation intensifies this process. When sleep is limited, the brain struggles to regulate emotion. People become quicker to react and slower to recover. What might have been manageable on a rested day can become explosive on a tired one. Stress also interferes with communication. When someone is already overwhelmed, even well-intentioned conversations can feel like one more thing to manage. Anger becomes a way to shut things down. Many people develop a pattern where anger only shows up at home. They hold it together at work or in public, then release it where they feel safest. This does not mean home is the problem. It means home is where the nervous system finally drops its guard. But that release comes at a cost. Families absorb the overflow. Partners and children experience the brunt of stress that did not originate with them. Over time, they learn to brace to avoid or to take responsibility for keeping the peace. This dynamic can feel unfair to everyone involved. The stressed person feels unseen and unsupported. The family feels unsafe and blamed. Breaking this pattern starts with recognizing stress as a risk factor, not an excuse. Stress increases vulnerability to anger. It lowers thresholds. It shortens fuses. That means managing anger requires managing stress. This does not mean eliminating stress completely. That is rarely possible. It means reducing what can be reduced. Protecting sleep, creating small pockets of recovery, asking for help before resentment builds, saying no earlier, addressing overload honestly. It also means learning to intervene sooner. When stress is high, the margin for error is small. Waiting until anger peaks is too late. Understanding the relationship between stress and anger helps shift the question. Instead of asking, "Why did I explode?" the question becomes, "What level of stress was my system under before this happened?" That question opens the door to prevention. Anger management is not only about controlling reactions, it is about respecting the limits of the nervous system and building a life that does not constantly push it past capacity. Chapter 5, Substance Use and the Loss of Control. Substances change how the brain manages emotion, judgment, and impulse. That matters deeply when it comes to anger. Many people separate their substance use from their anger. They treat them as two different issues. Stress causes the anger. Alcohol or other substances are just a way to unwind. They believe the substance helps them relax. In reality, substances often remove the very systems that keep anger in check. Alcohol is one of the strongest examples. Alcohol lowers inhibition. It reduces the brain's ability to pause, evaluate consequences, and regulate emotion. It also increases emotional reactivity. This combination is dangerous. The feelings that are already present come out faster, louder, and with less filtering. Alcohol does not create anger out of nothing. It removes the brakes. This is why people often say things while drinking that they would never say sober. This is why conflicts escalate more quickly. This is why tone shifts, judgment becomes harsher, and behavior crosses lines that feel shocking afterward. Stimulants can have a similar effect in a different way. They can increase irritability, restlessness, and suspicion. When combined with stress or lack of sleep, they can push the nervous system into a constant state of alertness. Anger in this state feels sharp and urgent. Cannabis affects people differently. For some, it reduces anxiety. For others, especially under stress or with certain brain chemistry, it can worsen emotional regulation. It can increase irritability, paranoia, or detachment, which can fuel conflict rather than soothe it. What matters most is not the substance itself, but the pattern. If anger shows up more often when a substance is involved, that connection needs to be taken seriously. Many people minimize this link because they focus on intent. They tell themselves they would never hurt anyone on purpose. They believe that because they do not intend harm, the risk is low. But intent does not protect others from impact. Substances lower the threshold for escalation. They shorten the time between irritation and action. They make it harder to notice early warning signs and harder to stop once anger starts. This is especially dangerous in environments where power dynamics already exist. Parenting, intimate relationships, caregiving, situations where others cannot easily leave or defend themselves. Another common trap is using substances as emotional regulation. Drinking or using to calm down after a hard day can feel effective in the short term, but it trains the nervous system to rely on an external agent rather than internal skills. Over time, tolerance builds. More is needed to get the same relief. Regulation becomes weaker, not stronger. When substance use and anger interact, the result is often a cycle. Stress builds. Substance use increases. Inhibition drops. Anger escalates. Shame follows. Stress increases again. Breaking this cycle requires honesty. Not moral judgment. Not labels. Not all or nothing thinking. Honesty. If substance use is present during anger episodes, it must be addressed as part of anger management. Trying to manage anger without addressing lowered inhibition is like trying to drive safely while ignoring a broken brake system. This does not always mean complete abstinence. For some people it does. For others it means reduction, boundaries, or treatment. What matters is that the risk is acknowledged and managed. Anger management is about reducing danger. Anything that increases the likelihood of losing control needs to be evaluated honestly. The goal is not to live a restricted life. The goal is to live a safer one, and that includes being clear about what helps you regulate and what quietly pushes you closer to the edge. Chapter 6. When anger escalates into dangerous territory. Most people who end up crossing serious lines never believed they would. They saw themselves as good people, loving parents, caring partners, responsible adults. They believed there were limits they would never cross. The problem is that anger does not jump from irritation to danger in one step. It escalates. And escalation is often subtle at first. It begins with raised voices, harsh words, cutting remarks, a shift in posture, invading personal space, slamming objects. These behaviors are often minimized because they are not yet physical harm. People tell themselves it is just venting, just blowing off steam, just expressing frustration. But to the nervous system of the person on the receiving end, these are not neutral behaviors. They are signals of threat. Anger becomes dangerous when it creates fear, unpredictability, or loss of safety. That can happen long before anyone is touched. Throwing objects, even if they are not aimed at anyone, communicates loss of control. Blocking doorways communicates dominance and confinement. Cornering someone during an argument communicates danger. These actions tell others that the situation is no longer emotionally safe. Another dangerous shift happens when anger becomes justified by belief. I would not be like this if they did not push me. This is the only way they listen. They need to know I am serious. These thoughts are warning signs. They signal that anger is starting to override empathy and self-restraint. When anger reaches this point, the brain's ability to consider consequences drops sharply. The body is flooded with stress hormones. The urge to act feels urgent and necessary. This is the state where people say and do things that permanently alter relationships and lives. Many people rely on one reassuring belief to calm themselves. I would never actually hurt anyone. But harm is not limited to physical injury. Fear itself is harm. Intimidation is harm. Unpredictability is harm. And physical harm often follows patterns of emotional escalation. Another risk factor is repetition. Each time anger escalates without intervention, the nervous system learns that escalation is an option. The threshold lowers, the speed increases. What once felt shocking becomes familiar. This is how lines move. People often look back and say they do not recognize how far things went. They feel confused by their own behavior. They feel ashamed and frightened by what they were capable of. Understanding escalation is not about labeling yourself as dangerous. It is about recognizing risk before damage occurs. Danger is not defined by intent. It is defined by impact and probability. If anger is leading to fear, intimidation, or loss of safety, it has entered dangerous territory. This is the point where managing anger is no longer optional. It is a responsibility, especially in families where children and partners cannot simply walk away. They rely on adults to create safety. When anger escalates in these environments, it reshapes how people feel in their own homes. Anger that reaches dangerous levels requires clear boundaries. No throwing objects, no blocking exits, no physical intimidation, no threats, no continuation of conflict once voices rise. These are not rules to control others. They are rules to protect everyone. If anger has already crossed these lines, professional support matters. Anger management programs, therapy, and structured intervention are not signs of failure. They are signs of taking responsibility seriously. The goal is not to live in fear of your anger. The goal is to prevent it from becoming something that controls your future. Recognizing escalation is a form of strength. It is choosing to intervene before something irreversible happens. Chapter 7. How anger gets you in trouble. Most people do not think their anger will ever have real consequences. They believe it stays inside the family, inside the relationship, inside the home. They believe what happens in moments of anger will pass once everyone cools down. But anger has a way of escaping the walls people think contain it. It shows up in places people do not expect. Anger often becomes a legal issue long before someone believes it will. Raised voices turn into noise complaints. Arguments turn into police calls. Threats spoken in anger become documented statements. One moment of escalation can create a paper trail that follows someone for years. Protective orders, custody evaluations, and family court decisions do not look at intent. They look at patterns and impact. They look at who feels unsafe. They look at what has been witnessed, reported, or documented. Even when no one is arrested, involvement with law enforcement changes how situations are viewed. It changes how families are assessed. It changes how authority responds the next time. Anger can also cost people their jobs. Workplaces do not tolerate behavior that creates fear or instability. Snapping at coworkers, intimidating language, or explosive reactions can lead to discipline or termination. Even a single incident can alter how someone is perceived professionally. Reputation damage is often permanent. People remember how it felt to be around someone when they were angry. They remember tone, posture, and unpredictability. Trust erodes quietly, then suddenly. In families, the consequences can be even more painful. Anger affects custody decisions. It affects visitation. It affects how safe a parent is seen to be. Courts prioritize stability and emotional safety. A pattern of unmanaged anger can change access to children in ways that feel shocking and devastating. Anger also creates social consequences that are harder to measure. Friends pull away. Family members limit contact. People stop inviting someone into certain spaces. This isolation often reinforces anger. It becomes another source of resentment and shame. Another overlooked consequence is how anger limits support. When people feel afraid or uncomfortable, they stop offering help. They stop being honest. They stop giving feedback. The angry person becomes more alone, even when surrounded by people. Many people believe consequences only come after extreme behavior. In reality, consequences often accumulate quietly. A note in a file, a concern expressed to a teacher, a comment made to a supervisor, a report made out of caution. These small things build a narrative. Anger can also trap people in cycles they do not want. Apologies become expected but not believed. Promises to change lose weight. Each incident makes the next one harder to recover from. This is where people often feel misunderstood. They feel judged for moments that do not reflect who they want to be. They feel trapped by their worst behavior. The truth is that consequences are not punishments. They are signals. They signal that something has crossed a line, that safety has been compromised, that trust needs to be rebuilt through action, not words. Anger management is not about avoiding consequences by hiding behavior. It is about reducing the likelihood of behavior that creates consequences in the first place. Taking anger seriously before it creates problems is far easier than repairing damage afterward. It protects relationships, it protects children, it protects careers, it protects freedom. Anger does not have to cost you your future, but unmanaged anger often does. Recognizing that risk is not about fear, it is about responsibility. Chapter 8. What anger does to families and children. Children experience anger differently than adults. They do not have the ability to rationalize it. They cannot contextualize stress. They cannot separate a parent's frustration from their own sense of safety. When anger enters a home, children feel it in their bodies first. They notice the shift in tone, the change in movement, the way the air feels heavier, the unpredictability of what might come next. Even when anger is not directed at them, children absorb it. They become alert. They watch closely. They adjust their behavior. This is not misbehavior or oversensitivity. It is adaptation. Children adapt to survive the emotional climate around them. In homes where anger is frequent or intense, children often develop hypervigilance. They scan moods. They try to anticipate reactions. They become experts at reading subtle cues because their safety depends on it. Some children respond by becoming quiet and compliant. They try not to add stress. They learn to minimize their needs. Others respond by acting out. They externalize the chaos they feel inside. Both are coping strategies. Anger also affects attachment. Attachment forms when children feel consistently safe, seen, and soothed. When anger is unpredictable, that sense of safety is disrupted. Children may still love deeply, but they do not relax fully. They learn that closeness can come with risk. This shapes how they relate to others later in life. Children raised around unmanaged anger are more likely to struggle with anxiety, emotional regulation, and relationships. They may repeat patterns they learned either by becoming angry themselves or by tolerating anger in others. Yelling is often defended as discipline. But fear does not teach self-control. It teaches compliance or avoidance. Children may obey in the moment, but the lesson they internalize is that power equals loudness and control. They do not learn how to manage their own emotions. They learn how to avoid triggering someone else's. Anger also affects the family system as a whole. Homes organize themselves around the most reactive person. Conversations become cautious. Plans change to prevent outbursts. Other family members take on the role of peacekeepers or buffers. This is exhausting for everyone. Partners often carry the emotional labor of managing the household mood. They may feel responsible for calming situations, protecting children, or absorbing frustration. Over time, resentment builds, intimacy fades, trust erodes. Children notice this dynamic too. They learn who holds power and who adapts. They learn what love looks like under pressure. None of this requires physical violence. Emotional intensity alone can shape a child's nervous system. The most painful part is that many parents who struggle with anger love their children deeply. They want to do better. They feel guilt and shame after outbursts. They promise themselves it will not happen again. But without skills and structure, promises are not enough. Children do not need perfect parents. They need predictable ones. They need to know that big emotions will be handled safely, that adults will take responsibility for their reactions. That repair will happen when mistakes are made. Managing anger with compassion is one of the most powerful gifts a parent can give. Not because it removes conflict, but because it teaches children that emotions can be felt without becoming dangerous. That lesson lasts a lifetime. Chapter 9. What anger does to relationships. Anger changes the shape of a relationship long before anyone says the words, "We have a problem." It changes how safe it feels to speak, how honest people are allowed to be, how much of themselves they bring into the room. In intimate relationships, anger does not just express frustration. It creates a climate. Partners begin to monitor tone. They choose words carefully. They rehearse conversations in their head before speaking. Not because they want to manipulate, but because they are trying to stay safe. This is how emotional distance begins. When anger is unpredictable, people stop sharing openly. They avoid topics that might trigger conflict. They keep concerns to themselves. They silence needs to preserve peace. Over time, this creates a relationship where one person's emotions dominate the space and the other adapts. Anger also distorts communication. When someone is angry, listening drops. Curiosity disappears. Everything becomes evidence for why the other person is wrong. Neutral comments are heard as criticism. Requests are heard as attacks. Disagreements feel personal. This creates escalation loops. One person reacts, the other defends. Anger increases, defensiveness increases, both feel misunderstood, both feel justified. The original issue is lost, but the emotional damage remains. Anger also erodes trust. Trust is not just about fidelity or honesty. It is about emotional safety. It is about knowing that difficult conversations will not turn into punishment, intimidation, or withdrawal. When anger becomes a regular response, trust weakens. Partners stop believing that conflict can be handled safely. They begin to protect themselves instead of reaching for connection. Love does not cancel fear. Someone can care deeply and still feel unsafe. Someone can want closeness and still pull away because the cost feels too high. Another impact of anger in relationships is role imbalance. Often, one partner becomes the emotional regulator. They manage timing. They soften language. They anticipate reactions. They take responsibility for keeping things calm. This creates exhaustion and resentment. The angry partner may feel criticized or controlled in response, which increases anger further. Both people feel trapped. Anger can also change how partners see each other. Moments of anger become defining moments. The image of a raised voice, a harsh sentence, or a threatening posture can replay long after the conflict ends. These moments accumulate and shape how someone feels in the relationship. Repair is possible, but it requires more than apologies. An apology without change becomes another source of pain. It teaches the other person that anger will keep happening, followed by regret, followed by repetition. What heals relationships is predictability. Knowing that anger will be managed, knowing that boundaries will be respected, knowing that voices will not be used as weapons. Managing anger in relationships does not mean never feeling upset. It means taking responsibility for how emotions are expressed. It means choosing safety over being right. It means understanding that impact matters more than intent. When anger is handled with compassion and accountability, relationships can recover. Trust can rebuild. Conversations can soften. But when anger remains unchecked, relationships shrink. They become quieter, more cautious, less alive. Anger management is not about saving a relationship at any cost. It is about creating conditions where connection is possible again. And that begins with recognizing that love cannot thrive in an environment where anger feels like a threat. Chapter 10. The hidden cost of anger on the self. Anger does not only damage the people around you, it damages you. This is often the part that gets overlooked because anger can feel energizing in the moment. It can feel clarifying. It can feel like strength. But over time, the cost shows up quietly and deeply. Many people who struggle with anger live with a constant sense of tension. Their body rarely feels at ease. Muscles stay tight. Breathing stays shallow. The nervous system stays on alert. Even during calm moments, there is a sense of waiting for the next problem. This constant activation is exhausting. It drains emotional energy. It interferes with sleep. It makes relaxation feel unsafe or unfamiliar. Anger also creates shame. After an outburst, many people feel regret. They replay what they said. They think about how it landed. They promise themselves it will not happen again. Over time, this cycle can erode self-respect. People begin to see themselves through the lens of their worst moments. They feel like a contradiction, loving and frightening, caring and harmful. This internal conflict is painful. Shame often feeds anger rather than resolving it. When someone feels ashamed, they may become defensive. They may justify their behavior. They may push blame outward to avoid sitting with discomfort. This keeps the cycle alive. Anger can also isolate people. Others may pull back, even if they do not say why. Conversations become superficial. Support becomes limited. The angry person may feel misunderstood and alone, which increases resentment. This isolation can lead to more anger, not less. Another hidden cost of anger is identity loss. People may stop recognizing themselves. They may feel like they are always reacting instead of choosing. They may feel controlled by circumstances, by other people, by their own emotions. Living this way creates a sense of helplessness. Anger also narrows life. People avoid situations that might trigger them. They limit activities. They withdraw from relationships. Life becomes organized around managing reactions rather than pursuing connection or meaning. Over time, this can lead to sadness and numbness. Anger is often easier to feel than grief, fear, or vulnerability. But when anger dominates, other emotions get buried. That burial does not heal anything, it just delays it. There is also a physical cost. Chronic anger and stress are linked to headaches, digestive issues, high blood pressure, and weakened immune function. The body was not designed to stay in fight mode indefinitely. Many people do not connect these issues to anger because they see anger as emotional, not physical. But the body experiences anger as a threat response. Another cost is the constant vigilance around control. When anger feels dangerous, people may try to suppress it. They clamp down. They avoid expressing anything. This suppression often backfires. The pressure builds until it leaks out in unpredictable ways. The alternative is not suppression. The alternative is regulation. Learning to feel anger without being consumed by it is a form of freedom. It allows access to the information anger carries without the destruction it can cause. Managing anger with compassion is not about becoming passive or emotionless. It is about reclaiming choice. It is about building a relationship with yourself that is not defined by fear of your own reactions. Anger does not have to control your life, but ignoring its impact on you makes change harder. Recognizing the personal cost of anger is not about guilt. It is about motivation, because you deserve a life that is not dominated by regret, tension, and repair. Chapter 11: Accountability without self-hatred. One of the biggest barriers to real anger management is the belief that accountability and compassion cannot coexist. Many people swing between two extremes. On one side is denial. It was not that bad. They are too sensitive. Anyone would have reacted that way. On the other side is self-hatred. I am a terrible person. I ruin everything. I will never change. Neither of these leads to growth. Denial protects the ego but keeps the behavior intact. Self-hatred punishes the self but also keeps the behavior intact. Accountability is something different. Accountability means telling the truth about impact without destroying yourself in the process. It means acknowledging harm without excuses and without collapse. This is harder than it sounds, because many people learned early on that admitting fault led to punishment, rejection, or humiliation. So when they feel confronted with the consequences of their anger, their nervous system reacts defensively. They explain, they justify, they minimize, or they shut down completely. Both reactions are about self-protection, but they block change. True accountability sounds like this. What I did had an impact. That impact matters, even if it was not my intention. I am responsible for managing my reactions. I am willing to do the work to change. Notice what is missing. There is no but. There is no shifting blame. There is no self-destruction. Accountability does not require you to believe you are bad. It requires you to believe your actions matter. This distinction is essential. When people hate themselves, they often become more reactive. Shame narrows perspective. It increases defensiveness. It makes it harder to stay present during conflict. It increases the urge to escape discomfort through anger, substances, or withdrawal. Self-hatred feels like punishment, but it is not corrective. It does not teach skills. It does not build capacity. It does not increase safety. Compassion, on the other hand, creates enough stability to learn. Compassion does not mean excusing harm. It means understanding why something happened while still committing to preventing it from happening again. This is especially important in families. Children do not need parents who are perfect. They need parents who take responsibility. A parent who can say, "I was wrong, that was not okay, and I am working on changing it," teaches something powerful. They teach that mistakes do not have to turn into denial or rage. They teach repair. They teach accountability with dignity. The same is true in adult relationships. Partners do not need endless apologies. They need evidence of change. They need to see that anger is being taken seriously, not just regretted afterward. Accountability also means accepting limits. If anger escalates under certain conditions, those conditions need to be managed. That might mean setting boundaries around alcohol, protecting sleep, stepping away from conversations earlier, seeking professional help. This is not weakness, it is responsibility. One of the most honest questions a person can ask is this: what would it look like to take my anger as seriously as its impact on others demands? Not with fear, not with shame, but with commitment. Managing anger with compassion means holding yourself to a standard that protects others while still allowing yourself to grow. You are not required to be perfect. You are required to be accountable, and accountability, when paired with compassion, is what makes lasting change possible. Chapter 12, Early Warning Signs, Catching Anger Before It Takes Over. Most people try to manage anger far too late. They wait until their voice is already raised, until their body is tight and hot, until the words are halfway out. At that point, the nervous system is already in control. Anger management becomes much more effective when it happens earlier, before the surge reaches its peak. This requires learning to recognize the warning signs that show up before anger fully takes over. Anger almost always announces itself quietly first. The problem is that many people live in a constant state of tension. They are so used to being stressed, rushed, or irritated that early warning signs feel normal. They are ignored or pushed through until the reaction becomes unavoidable. Early warning signs appear in three main places: the body, the mind, and behavior. In the body, the signs are physical: jaw clenching, tight shoulders, pressure in the chest, heat in the face, shallow breathing, a buzzing feeling in the arms or legs, a sudden urge to move, pace, or slam something. These sensations are not random. They are signals that the nervous system is activating. In the mind, warning signs sound like urgency and certainty. This needs to stop now. I cannot deal with this anymore. They are doing this on purpose. If I do not take control, everything will fall apart. These thoughts feel convincing because anger narrows perspective. The mind shifts into threat mode and starts telling a story that justifies immediate action. Behavioral signs are often visible to others before they are noticed internally. Tone becomes sharper, speech speeds up, interrupting increases, sarcasm appears, eye contact becomes intense or avoidant, small movements become abrupt. These shifts matter. They are the last chance to intervene before escalation. A helpful way to understand this process is to imagine anger on a scale. At the low end, there is mild irritation. In the middle, tension and narrowing. At the high end, loss of control. Most people wait until anger is already high to try to stop it. By then, the brain's ability to pause and choose has dropped significantly. Effective anger management happens earlier, at the first signs of activation. This requires practicing awareness during calm moments, not just during conflict. Paying attention to your baseline state helps you recognize when something shifts. It also requires honesty about patterns. Anger tends to follow predictable paths, certain times of day, certain topics, certain stress levels, certain environments, certain people, certain substances, certain levels of exhaustion. When anger feels unpredictable, it is often because these patterns have not been examined. Learning your early warning signs is not about becoming hypervigilant or anxious. It is about building choice. When you can recognize that your body is escalating, you can intervene before harm occurs. You can pause. You can step away. You can use regulation tools that bring the nervous system back down. This is not avoidance. It is prevention. Catching anger early does not mean you never address the issue that triggered it. It means you choose to address it from a state where thinking and empathy are still available. People often worry that if they stop themselves early, they will lose their chance to be heard. In reality, early intervention protects your ability to communicate clearly. Anger does not need to be suppressed, it needs to be slowed. Recognizing early warning signs is one of the most powerful skills in anger management because it moves you from reaction to choice. And choice is where change begins. Chapter 13, What to Do in the Moment. Managing anger while it is happening. When people imagine anger management, they often picture calm reflection. That is not realistic in the moment anger hits. When anger is active, the nervous system is already elevated. The body is primed for action. Expecting yourself to reason clearly or talk yourself out of it at that stage usually fails. This is why so many people feel like anger takes over. Effective in the moment management works with the body first, not against it. The primary goal in the moment is not to resolve the issue. It is not to win the argument. It is not to be right. The goal is safety. Safety for the people around you. Safety for the relationship. Safety for your future. Safety for your own integrity. The first skill is interruption. Anger builds momentum. The longer it runs uninterrupted, the harder it is to stop. Interrupting that momentum is essential. Interruption can be physical. Stop speaking mid-sentence. Put your hands down. Change your posture. Step back instead of leaning forward. These small actions signal to the nervous system that escalation is not continuing. The second skill is a real timeout. A real timeout is not storming away. It is not slamming doors. It is not silent punishment. A real timeout is a safety boundary. It sounds like this. I'm getting too activated to talk safely. I need a break. I want to continue this later, but not like this. I need 10 minutes to calm my body so I do not make this worse. These statements do two things. They name responsibility, and they protect others from being trapped in your escalation. If children are present, this skill is even more important. Children need to see that strong emotions can be handled with limits and care, not explosions. Taking a structured break models self-control, not avoidance. Once you have space, the next step is down-regulation. This is where techniques that affect the nervous system matter. Slow breathing with longer exhales sends a signal of safety to the body. You are not trying to eliminate anger. You are trying to lower intensity. Inhale through the nose. Exhale longer through the mouth. Repeat until the physical edge softens. Temperature change can also help. Cold water on the face. Holding something cool. Stepping into fresh air. These shifts can interrupt the stress response because they redirect sensory input. Movement helps release built-up activation. A brisk walk, stretching, shaking out the arms. Controlled physical activity allows the stress response to complete instead of staying trapped in the body. Once the body has settled even slightly, the mind can re-enter the process. At this stage, the goal is not self-criticism. It is orientation. Name what is happening. My body is in threat mode. I am interpreting this as danger or disrespect. If I keep pushing right now, I will escalate. This kind of internal language creates distance between you and the impulse to act. If the anger came from conflict, resist the urge to immediately re-engage. Heated conversations rarely lead to resolution. They lead to repetition and harm. Postponement is a skill, not avoidance forever. postponement until thinking and empathy return. When you return to the issue, structure matters. One topic at a time, clear requests, a willingness to listen, a calm tone. These are only possible once the nervous system has settled. People often fear that stepping away means losing their power or being dismissed. In reality, the ability to pause is a form of power. It shows that anger does not control you. It shows that you can feel heat without acting destructively. It protects the people you care about. Managing anger in the moment is not about perfection. It is about making one safer choice than you would have made before, and those safer choices add up. Chapter 14, Long-Term Anger Management. Why willpower fails and systems work. Most people try to manage anger using willpower. They promise themselves they will not explode again. They decide to be calmer. They tell themselves to stop overreacting. They mean it sincerely. Then life happens. They get tired. They get stressed. They feel disrespected. They feel cornered. They have one more demand placed on them when their tank is empty. And the anger returns. This is not because they are hopeless. It is because willpower is not a plan. Anger management becomes reliable when it is built into a system, a set of daily and weekly choices that lowers baseline stress and increases emotional capacity. The goal is not to eliminate anger. The goal is to reduce how easily anger is triggered and how intensely it escalates. Start with the basics, because the basics are not optional. Sleep is one of the strongest protective factors for emotional regulation. When sleep is low, the brain struggles to inhibit impulses and slow reactions. Patience decreases. Recovery time increases. The same conflict that might be manageable with rest becomes explosive without it. If anger is a pattern, sleep becomes a priority, not a luxury. Nutrition also matters. Blood sugar swings can increase irritability. Skipping meals can create agitation that feels like emotional anger, but is partly physical. Hydration matters as well. Tension increases when the body is depleted. Movement is another major stabilizer. The nervous system needs physical discharge. Exercise does not have to be intense. Regular walking, stretching, or movement breaks can lower baseline activation. When the body has a way to release stress energy, anger has less pressure behind it. Stress management is not only relaxation, it is load reduction. Many people who struggle with anger are carrying too much. Too many responsibilities, too little support, too few boundaries. Anger becomes the overflow of a life that is constantly demanding more than the nervous system can give. Load reduction means saying no earlier. It means asking for help before resentment builds. It means creating routines that protect recovery time. It means acknowledging that burnout is not a moral failure. It is a warning sign. Substance use must be addressed honestly. If alcohol or other substances are connected to anger episodes, long-term anger management is not possible without changing that pattern. Substances lower inhibition. They reduce judgment. They increase the likelihood of escalation. A system that ignores this is fragile. Therapy and skill building matter because anger is not only a reaction. It is a learned pattern. Evidence-supported approaches like cognitive behavioral skills, trauma-informed therapy, and structured anger management programs can help people identify triggers, challenge distorted thinking, and practice new responses. The value is not in having insight alone. The value is in practicing skills until they become available under pressure. A key long-term skill is reframing, not in a fake way, but in a reality-based way. Anger often comes with mental certainty. They are doing this on purpose. They do not care. They are disrespecting me. I have to stop this now. Long-term work involves learning to pause and ask, what else could be true? What am I assuming? What is this touching in me? What do I need that I am not saying? Boundaries are another central component. Many people explode because they do not express needs early. They tolerate too much, then erupt. They call the eruption honesty, but it is delayed boundary setting delivered through aggression. Healthy boundaries prevent explosions by reducing resentment. Finally, long-term anger management includes identity. Some people secretly believe anger is strength. They fear that without it they will be ignored or controlled. They learn that softness is unsafe. Changing anger means changing that belief. Strength is not intimidation. Strength is self-control. A system built on sleep, nutrition, movement, boundaries, reduced risk factors, and practice skills creates stability. It lowers the chance of escalation. It increases the ability to choose. And that is the real goal. Not a perfect personality, a safer pattern. Chapter 15, Repair and Rebuilding Trust. What to do after you mess up. Most people think anger management is about stopping anger. But if anger has already caused damage, the most important question becomes something else. What happens after? Because outbursts do not end when your nervous system calms down. They keep living in the bodies of the people who experience them. They replay in memory. They change how safe the relationship feels. They change what people expect from you. This is why repair matters. Repair is not a quick apology designed to make everyone move on. Repair is a process that acknowledges harm, restores safety, and rebuilds trust over time. The first part of repair is taking responsibility without excuses. Many people sabotage repair by adding a but. I am sorry, but you pushed me. I am sorry, but I was stressed. I am sorry, but you know how you get. Those statements may feel true to you, but they shift blame and make the other person feel unsafe. They communicate that the outburst will happen again if conditions repeat. Real repair sounds like this. I was wrong. I raised my voice. I scared you. That was not okay. You did not deserve that. I take responsibility. Notice what that does. It names impact. It does not debate the other person's perception. It does not ask them to justify their feelings. It does not demand forgiveness. The second part of repair is naming what will change. People do not rebuild trust through words alone. They rebuild it through predictability. They need evidence that you are not just sorry, but different. This might sound like, next time I feel that escalation, I'm taking a break before I speak. I am creating a timeout plan, and I will use it. I am cutting back on alcohol because it lowers my control. I am getting professional help. I am practicing regulation daily, not just when I am angry. If you cannot name what will change, the apology becomes a moment of relief without a path forward. Repair with children requires extra care. Children often interpret adult anger as their fault. Even if you never say it is their fault, they feel the tension and assume responsibility. They may become quieter, more watchful, more anxious, or more defiant. Repair with a child needs clarity and safety. I yelled. That was not your fault. My job is to keep you safe, and I did not handle my feelings the right way. I am working on doing better. Next time I feel that big anger, I'm taking a break instead of yelling. You can always tell me if you feel scared. This teaches a child something powerful, that emotions can be repaired, that adults can take responsibility, that mistakes do not have to become denial. The third part of repair is allowing time. Trust is not a decision. It is a nervous system shift. Someone may intellectually understand that you are trying, but their body may still brace. They may still flinch. They may still hold back. That is not punishment. That is memory. Trying to rush someone past that stage often creates more harm. It communicates that your comfort matters more than their safety. The fourth part of repair is consistency. A pattern of anger followed by apologies followed by more anger does not heal relationships. It teaches people to endure cycles. Over time, apologies lose meaning, even if they are sincere. Consistency is what rebuilds trust. Not one perfect week, not one heartfelt conversation. Repeated evidence that you are safer than you were. If anger has included intimidation, threats, or physical aggression, repair alone is not enough. Safety planning and professional support become essential. Love does not erase danger. Accountability and structure reduce risk. Repair is not humiliation. Repair is leadership. It is the willingness to look at your impact, take responsibility, and do the work that makes your presence feel safe again. That is what real change looks like in relationships. Not never getting angry, but refusing to let anger keep damaging the people you love. Chapter 16, Creating an Anger Management Plan. Turning insight into action. Insight alone does not change behavior. Many people understand their anger very well. They know where it comes from. They know what it costs. They know what they wish they would do differently. And yet, when the moment comes, they fall back into the same patterns. This is not a lack of caring. It is a lack of structure. An anger management plan turns good intentions into predictable action. It exists before the trigger happens, so you are not trying to invent solutions while your nervous system is already activated. A real plan has several parts. The first part is identifying triggers. Triggers are not excuses. They are conditions that increase risk. Common triggers include sleep deprivation, hunger, financial stress, feeling criticized, sensory overload, being interrupted, conflict around parenting, alcohol use, or feeling trapped in a conversation. The goal is not to eliminate every trigger. That is unrealistic. The goal is to know which situations require extra care and earlier intervention. The second part is naming early warning signs. This connects directly to the work you have already done. What happens in your body before anger escalates? Jaw tension, heat, faster speech, the urge to control, certain thoughts that repeat. These signs are your cue to act, not to push through, not to finish the argument, to intervene. The third part is exit strategies. An exit strategy answers one question: what will I do when I notice escalation? This needs to be simple and rehearsed. A specific phrase you will use to pause a conversation, a physical step back, a place you will go to cool down, a time limit for the break, a commitment to return to the issue later. Exit strategies are not avoidance, they are safety measures. If you have children, exit strategies protect them from exposure to adult escalation. If you have a partner, exit strategies prevent conflicts from turning into intimidation or harm. The fourth part is regulation tools. These are the tools you use during the break to lower activation: breathing, movement, temperature, grounding. The goal is not to eliminate anger, but to reduce intensity enough to regain choice. It is important to choose tools you will actually use, not what sounds good on paper, what works in real life. The fifth part is accountability and support. Anger management is harder in isolation. Accountability keeps the plan real. This might include a therapist, an anger management group, a trusted friend, a partner agreement, or a written log where you track incidents honestly. Accountability is not about punishment. It is about feedback. Another important part of the plan is after-action review. After an anger episode, when you are calm, review what happened. What triggered me? What were my early signs? Where did I intervene or fail to intervene? What helped? What made it worse? What will I try earlier next time? This turns anger into information instead of shame. If substance use has been part of anger escalation, the plan must address it directly. Reducing or eliminating substances is not a moral statement. It is a safety decision. Finally, the plan needs daily maintenance. Anger management is not something you do only when angry. It is something you support every day. Sleep, food, movement, boundaries, recovery time. These keep baseline stress lower so anger does not spike as easily. A plan does not make you perfect. It makes you predictable. Predictability is what creates safety in relationships. It is what allows trust to rebuild. It is what helps children relax. It is what allows you to live without constantly fearing your own reactions. Creating a plan is an act of responsibility. It says, I take my impact seriously enough to prepare. That preparation is what turns intention into change. Chapter 17, The Choice Point. Becoming safer, not perfect. At some point, anger stops feeling like a passing problem and starts feeling like a defining force. Not because you want it to be, because you see the pattern. You see how quickly it rises. You see the fear it creates. You see the way people change around you. Maybe you have seen your child go quiet. Maybe you have watched your partner stop bringing things up. Maybe you have felt your own shame afterward and wondered why you keep doing the same thing. This moment is the choice point. It is the moment where denial and change split into two different paths. Denial does not always look like arrogance. Sometimes it looks like exhaustion. I am doing my best. Life is hard. I am under too much pressure. People should not push me. Those statements can contain truth. Life can be hard. Pressure can be real. But denial happens when the truth about pressure becomes a reason to ignore the truth about impact. The people you love can understand your stress and still be harmed by your anger. Both can be true. The choice point is where you stop arguing with reality. You stop debating whether your anger is justified. You stop measuring your behavior against someone who is worse. You stop telling yourself you are not that bad. And you start asking a different question. What kind of environment am I creating? Because that is what anger does. It creates an environment. It creates a home where people are braced, a relationship where people filter their words, a family that organizes itself around avoiding explosions. This is not about one bad day. It is about the atmosphere that forms over time. The most persuasive reason to change is not fear of consequences, although consequences are real. The most persuasive reason is this: anger changes the people around you. Children learn what love looks like under stress. If love comes with unpredictability, they learn to stay alert. They learn to appease, shrink, or fight back. They carry those lessons into adulthood. Partners learn whether honesty is safe. If honesty leads to escalation, they learn to hide parts of themselves. They become less present, less open, less trusting. Even if you never intended to teach these lessons, they are being taught. This is the weight of the choice point. Managing anger is not about becoming a calmer person for appearances. It is about becoming a safer person for the people who live with you. That includes you. Because living in the aftermath of your own anger is a painful life. The regret, the repair, the worry that you will do it again, the feeling that you are losing control of who you want to be. Change is possible, but it requires commitment that goes beyond motivation. Motivation fades when you are tired. Commitment stays when you are tired. Commitment looks like practicing skills daily. It looks like stepping away earlier. It looks like reducing substances that lower control. It looks like getting professional support when needed. It looks like accountability. It looks like repair that includes behavior change. Most importantly, commitment looks like refusing to let anger be the thing that shapes your family. This is where compassion matters again. Compassion does not mean saying it is fine. Compassion means believing you can change without hating yourself into paralysis. It means holding two truths at once. I have caused harm. I can become safer. Anger does not make you a monster, but ignoring its impact allows the monster to grow. So the choice point is simple, even when the work is not. You can keep managing fallout, or you can manage anger before it escalates. You can keep apologizing, or you can build a system that makes apologies rare. You do not have to become perfect. You have to become accountable. You have to become safer. And if you are listening to this, that means the part of you that wants change is still alive. That part matters. Protect it. Build on it. Choose again and again to be the person your family can relax around. That is the goal. Safer, not perfect. Closing where change actually begins. If you have listened this far, it means something in you is already awake. People do not stay with this kind of material unless they recognize themselves in it. Unless they feel the cost of anger in their own life. Unless they want something to be different, not just for appearances, but for the people they love and for themselves. Change does not begin with a promise to never get angry again. It begins with honesty. Honesty about impact. Honesty about patterns. Honesty about what has not worked. Anger does not go away because you decide it should. It changes because you learn how to meet it earlier, manage it differently, and take responsibility for what it does when it is not contained. This work is not about becoming calm all the time. It is about becoming safe. Safe to be around when you are stressed. Safe to talk to when something is hard. Safe to disagree with without fear of escalation. That kind of safety is built through small, consistent choices. Stepping away sooner, lowering your voice, taking a break before words turn sharp, reducing the factors that lower your control, practicing regulation even when you are not angry, repairing with humility when you mess up. No one gets this right all at once. Progress is uneven. There will be days when you catch yourself early and days when you do not. What matters is not perfection. What matters is direction. Each time you choose to intervene earlier, you weaken the old pattern. Each time you repair honestly, you build trust. Each time you take responsibility without self-hatred, you create space for real change. The people in your life do not need you to be flawless. They need you to be accountable. They need to know that your anger will not run the house, that it will not define the relationship, that it will not be the thing they organize themselves around. And you deserve that too. You deserve a life that is not shaped by regret and repair. You deserve to feel proud of how you handle pressure. You deserve to know that when anger shows up, you have choices. Change does not happen all at once. It happens one safer moment at a time, and those moments add up. This is where it begins.